all these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain innate.
All right, welcome back to the Just Law podcast from BC Law. I'm Tom Blakely.
I'm Joanna Plaisir.
And this is the first time we've both been inside of our studio, which you can see here. I know you've seen me in here, for better or for worse. Joanna's finally here. We're back to school. We're back in our studio. We're no longer relegated to Zoom. I mean, this is a nice digs here. How's it feel?
Yeah, no, this is definitely way cooler than sitting in my bedroom on Zoom
for
trying
sure
to manufacture my own angles.
I know the sound quality, the picture quality. I mean, this is where
fantastic.
This is where I think you want to be doing something like this.
Super cool.
So today is Monday, September 20th. We've been back at it. We've been back at the grindstone for some time here. How's it feel to be back?
It feels completely different from first year. Like, I really feel like last year the school was just like there were people around,
right?
But for the most part, it was just such a foreign environment. I feel like the school's really like alive,
right?
now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that because obviously last year was our 1L year, and you were sort of all in this one room, spread out, masks. It was a sort of a foreign experience. Extremely. But then this year, it kind of feels more like college. We're in different classes, smaller classes.
Seeing people in the lunchroom,
right? Just seeing people's faces. I mean, sometimes you see the bottom half you never saw before. It's like, holy smokes, that's man. But yeah, you haven't we didn't have. I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, we kind of went to class and went home last year because everything was kind of closed.
Right.
But it's really different. But before we get into that, I mean, obviously last semester ends. I think I said hit submit on the con law file, and we were off the summer. So I guess how was your summer?
Man, summer is a different experience in law school than any other summer I've had before. Mostly because like internship work,
right.
So I worked at a criminal defense firm and an immigration firm over the summer.
Oh, cool.
And it was cool to just go to work. And like, it was honestly, I got a hint of what life could be outside of law school. And, it was definitely nice having everything end at 5 o'clock. Where in school,
it's a 24-hour operation in there.
Nonstop. But yeah, I really liked summer. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, so this summer I worked at the Wilmer Hale Legal Services Center at Harvard Law. I was in the Veterans Clinic, which was a really great experience. I actually I worked remotely. Did you work remotely, or were you in person?
Half remote, half in person.
Okay, yeah. So I was all remote. So I actually would come to this library at the BC Law campus, kind of over I'm not plugging the law. I mean, it's a nice place to be, but it just happened to be where I did my work.
I don't think the law library needs a plug.
Right. It's an
institution in itself.
It's a place of legends. Yeah. But I would come in and do the work, and you'd have conference calls, and it was really, I think, a great introduction to what legal work is and sort of what it's like to be a lawyer. I had really, really phenomenal clients with great stories. People who've served honorably, and whether it's because they needed a discharge upgrade or benefits or different issues that they were working through. I mean, you'd hear these people's stories and things that they, would trust you to deal with. And it was just a great working environment. I thought the supervising attorneys were really great. And really, like you said, like kind of seeing what it's like to have a 9 to 5, at least relatively speaking, day where you're not necessarily doing homework, but you're doing real work for real people. Like, I thought it was a really, really great experience. I really enjoyed my summer work, but it really did feel like, school ended. I started, I think it was like May 24th. I think I started my job. So it was like school ended, we sent our last final, and then the job started a week later. There was the, basically, kind of little time there. You start the job, and then a few weeks later we were applying to jobs for next year, doing OCI, which is, everybody's favorite thing. But it was busy. It felt busy, but like sort of in a good way. Like you're being productive.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
No, yeah, definitely. Like it felt it was substantive work.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And also like just with law school, like clinics aside, you really just read about people's lives like on a casebook, and it's so much more different when you have the person in front of you. So, for example, at my criminal defense firm, we worked with a juvenile detainee, and I got to meet him. I got to hear more of his story, and just added way much more color and, like, honestly, higher stakes because it's someone's entire life.
Right.
And it really just goes to show what we can do with our profession. So I think I'm looking forward to it, honestly. And that's honestly what made OCI all the more worth it, to be real. Because even though that process in itself was a bit arduous, could you imagine what more we could do with the resources of a bigger firm,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and I also thought too. I mean, when you start your job, the things that you'd be entrusted to work on, it's like, oh, they're. I mean, I guess there's a bit of imposter syndrome. You're sort of like, is this you're letting me do that? You're letting me look this up? You're letting me,
Right.
sort of write these things. So there was some of that, but I really enjoyed my experience, and I think that's why. I mean, at least for myself, like I like that sort of hands-on. You're talking to people, you're having the
Yeah.
conference calls, you're doing different things like that. It was more or less pretty enjoyable. And then of course, that was through June, and we're 1L's going into 2L, and
Right.
we're applying to OCI. We're filling out, oh gosh, I don't know how many of
That
those things. That's
transition from 1L to 2L
yeah,
in itself was
it's a
crazy.
force.
Like after after 1L ended,
Mhm.
like even during summer when I would be at networking events, they'd be
Mhm.
like, "Oh, they'd ask me what year in school I am." I'd say 1L just
Mhm.
by
Right,
default
me too.
because I don't know, just things didn't really even feel real
Some of
until
us are
like
still 1Ls.
right. Some of us are still 1Ls in a certain portion. But yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Um I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, that's all right. I think now, how do you feeling? Because you're going through this thing. It's like, what is it? The Sage platform is how you apply to these.
Oh yes,
You
yeah.
bid, which
Mhm.
is an interesting way to describe applying to a
Let's
job.
demystify the process
There's a
in
lot of
general.
myths that need to be yeah.
So like I think the career services
Mm-hmm.
office did a great job
Mm-hmm.
setting up the process.
Yeah.
So for anyone else listening that might have some anxieties about that, which if you do, you have plenty more on your plate to worry about, like the
Don't be
first
worrying
thing.
about that now. There's other hurdles to overcome before then.
But when the time comes,
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest part is just staying organized and
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out not you don't need to know what practice area.
Mm-hmm.
If it's
No,
helpful if
yeah.
you do, but at the same time, having a general idea of what kind of experience you want for your summer would be the best advice to offer as a guiding process to OCI.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're confronted with OCI on Sage, you just see a list of all these different firms in a variety of different
Just a
places.
menagerie of firms. Just all,
Menagerie.
yeah, alphabet soup.
And on top of that, there are things even within that, like cover letters and having to do
Oh, well, let's talk
research.
about that for a minute, because
Oh
that's
my
something that
lord.
there's a lot of. Holy cow! So the cover letter. So it would be interesting. I think from what I remember, because I made an Excel spreadsheet, which I thought was helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, every firm basically had the same. That was like July 7th. You had to turn all your stuff in.
Yeah.
But one of the things I would keep track of is whether or not they wanted a cover letter. And I think from what I remember, it was about half wanted one, and then the other half just wouldn't bother with it. But that was I got good at it, but I think it's something, and I know from talking to other 2Ls that I mean, at a certain point, it became. I mean, let's just be honest. At a certain point, it just became like changing the street in Boston, and like it's either like Congress Street, Boylston, because they're all in the same place. It's just you
Right.
change like legal recruiting manager to manager of legal recruit, because it's all. But and then of course you put something about that particular firm. What they do, what is it that appeals to you. You do your research as well. But it was a tough. I'd say like you were right that like CSO did or does, through their platform, make it something that's pretty easy to navigate. But at the same time, like, I felt like the cover letters were something where you kind of had to you obviously have to customize it, but for a lot of these places, you upload, it's the same thing. It's it's your transcript, your resume, which is obviously important. Sometimes they want the cover letter, and sometimes that they don't. But I recall it was about like half. I don't know if that was the same in your experience.
Honestly, a majority of mine
Really?
asked for a
Okay.
cover letter, but I do agree that there are certain parts of the cover letter that you can have as a template where
Right.
you're describing yourself, for example,
And you want a customized part for like what
for the firm,
it is
of
about them that
course.
speaks to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely though, some firms ask for like lists of professional references.
I saw a few of those. Yeah, I remember that.
I definitely had our LP professor as one of them.
Professor Keller.
Professor
A
Keller.
legend.
So make sure you get close to your professors, because I'm not sure whom spoke for me in what regard, but I definitely, when they ask for these, it's not sort of like
right.
your part-time employee.
And I think it can be a little bit hard too, because they're asking for references, and you're thinking like, well, who can I, not only trust to sort of, if they were to be contacted, put in a good word for me, but I think sometimes it can be a challenging thing to ask. Like, well, who do I know? Because if you're, people coming straight through from college, maybe don't have, haven't had a ton of jobs, it can be tough to come up with that list. I mean, I know one of the things I applied to wanted 4 references, and so I had to think about, I ended up kind of figuring it out, but that can be something that throws, I think, another curveball into the process, because a lot of these places want, the same few documents, but some places want, references. And another thing is the writing sample. I know a lot of firms
my gosh,
wanted that. How did you navigate that?
I mean, with LP, it's super helpful.
Right, of course.
So I think Professor Van Ness also does this, but towards the end of the semester, the memo that you're actually for the 1Ls that you've written right now, and there's another memo you're going to write in spring. You can use either of those that the professors will help you convert into like a sort of template where
Right.
it sort of gives the firm's backgrounds as to what what you were doing in it. So yeah, definitely the writing sample was interesting.
Yeah.
I am curious if they did read it, but
well, I had I recall one of my interviews I was asked about it. They had
ask specifically
during a callback.
Which
They had which memo?
No, yeah, which one did they ask for?
So so I was able to pick. So I actually at this point had one from my job that I had been doing over the summer, and then obviously I had LP1 and LP2.
Yeah.
Now LP2 was a sexual harassment case, as you remember, which I wasn't entirely comfortable using that to apply with because I figured like, well, if somebody asked me about it, like I want to pick, and of course LP1 was the dog, the Kents, the very sad story what happened to this dog. It's a real it's a real page turner.
I think they're
Unfortunately,
doing that again.
The same one.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, they should give them something that's
a little bit more
kind of like a coffee table conversation, something we can all kind of gather around, and then not just like the death of this girl's dog. But I ended up going with that one because I felt like it's easier to kind of discuss that, even though it's also sad. But so that's the one that I ended up sending, and I put a little intro to it and kind of formatted it the way that they tell you that you ought to. And it was so you had teams during this callback, so I was getting double teamed by there was one after it was on Zoom. We all were, I don't know, there's Zoom, there's WebEx, there's different ways that they do these things. And for this one, it was very straightforward. I mean, I sort of, I wouldn't say memorized it, but I was very familiar with everything that was in the memo because I knew I was going to be asked about it. And I remember I think the questions were something along the lines of like, if there were practical questions like, okay, let's say I'm a busy supervising attorney, busy partner, and I didn't have time to read this whole memo. Can you just summarize it for me? Which is simple enough. And so I was able to do that, and they seemed to be impressed with what I had to say. But it is important. Every 1L is going to walk out of 1L with you're going to walk out of 1L with a lot of things, but one of them is 2 memos. And I think you can look at like which one you did better on, or however it is you want to do that. But you're going to be in good shape to be able to handle the writing sample. I know the cover letter is that can be monotonous.
Yes, yeah, it's something you'll get used to. And
that.
I just want to highlight, although. So just for anybody who's listening that might not know, OCIs, on-campus interviews, where some of the bigger firms in the New England area come to BC and offer positions for their summer jobs, which usually turn into full-time employment after graduation. But I think something that the law school community generally, from what I've been hearing about, is that BC has a higher emphasis on going from BC into firm work. And I just want to make sure our listeners know that that's not the only way to do it.
Absolutely.
And especially if OCI itself, that does not have to be the path that you get your job, even if you want to go into a firm.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we have that government firm, right? Or government firm. We have the government organization where a bunch of different government agencies come in, offer positions. Additionally, we have a really strong public interest alumni network to work off of. So like you're going to hear, and I guess this is going off of advice to 1Ls from our sage 2L perspective.
Wise beyond our years.
I wouldn't say beyond, but there's a lot of things that you have to worry about in law school, and if that isn't clear initially, just trust the process.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing to do because, and it's also important to note that if you want a firm job, OCI is certainly not the only way to do it. It does seem to be the hyped way, of finding where it is that you're going to land, so to speak. But one of the things that I think is not emphasized enough that I think for at least speaking to my own experience was tremendously valuable is the value of networking, the importance of networking, because these firms, I mean, in a lot of ways, because it is sort of prescribed, OCO, you apply, you bid, like it's an auction, you do that, and then there's screeners, then there's callbacks, and then I don't know, they go in the back room and they, whatever it is that they do, the soothsayers, but they figure out who they're going to make offers to, and that's that. But one of the things you can really do that's in your control is to network, reach out. I mean, all these firms have everyone who works there and their email and their phone number and information about them on their website. It's something that's very easy to do. And I think
With the
not
school
enough
they
people
went
do
to
it.
too.
Yeah, and the school.
That's
So
huge.
I mean, even colleges, you can go on LinkedIn, and I think that one of the things that's really important and is not emphasized enough is these people, particularly if you're able to connect with partners, which I was able to, or I was able to. I know other people were able to. A lot of these people can make the decisions. They can pick up the phone and either decide they're going to help you or not. Like you have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Right.
But even if that doesn't result in your job, you've made a connection. There's someone you can talk to. You can learn more.
Yeah.
And it's not something that everyone does, but it's tremendously important, not only to develop that skill, but when you're going through this process, not everyone is, in a matter of fact, statistically, less than half of people are going to wind up, at least at BCL, are going to end up, coming out of that process with the job that they end up taking, because not everything runs through Sage. You can call people, email people. I know that, we're returning to some in-person things. You go to networking events. It's tremendously important to be able to do that, because you'd be surprised how many people want to help.
Right.
You can, I found people who went to the same high school as me. You have things in common to talk about. It's very easy. I know it can be something that makes some people nervous. You're to be talking to some attorney, somebody who's
I definitely want to say that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Don't mean to cut you off.
No, somebody had to.
But with partners and stuff, definitely initially, like towards the beginning of the process, I was nervous to speak to partners because there's someone who's so ranking. Like, for example, there was a firm I was speaking to where, you know how like a firm will have the names, like that partner was one of
the named partner.
The named partner. There you go.
Prestigious.
Right. And so I was scared out of my mind. And in actuality, they're people.
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
It's true.
Like I remember we spoke about skiing. I went skiing for the first time last fall, and that firm specifically was located in Maine, so they had a close connection. You really just have to build up the guts to reach out to them, and once you do that, that's the hardest part of it. Every time I've spoken to a higher ranking associate or a partner, they say that even if they're inundated with work, if they see that somebody puts out the effort to send out an email, they'll have to, like, they don't feel obligated, but just the effort's there, so they want to respond to that. So definitely shouldn't be scared. It makes sense to be scared, but they're people at the end of the day, so for sure.
Yeah. And they like to. These are people that like to talk. They like to tell people about what they do. I found
lawyers like to talk about.
Well, yeah, we know that. Certainly ourselves, but
we have a podcast,
right? Exactly. But I was surprised, honestly, by how many people were willing to get on the phone or were willing to email, and it can only help you. And so that's definitely something to keep in mind. Now, one of the things I was thinking about is obviously all the episodes that we've done together to this point, there were 5 of us. Now there were 2, because obviously Kevin O'Sullivan, Leah Silverman, Mark Grayson were 3 L's when we
have since moved on.
We took the torch as 1 L's, and they are no longer here. But I think back on all those episodes that we did, and I know that they've since graduated and taken the bar, as Kevin would pronounce it. And it is, I think, I know COVID had a role in this, but I don't think we're ever able to like all sit around, and maybe that would be too many cooks in the kitchen to do that. But I do try to keep in touch with them from time to time. They obviously, I know there's a picture online of like Kevin and Lee. I think the 3 of them were like in some configuration of this room before, like right before COVID.
Yeah.
COVID began. But I wonder, what do you think Kevin's up to these days?
I don't know.
Colorful guy.
I think we should find out.
Let's just call him. Just see what he's probably like on like the Mass Pike, like just doing something random. Probably like a Lowe's, like
something.
Weymouth. Yeah. All right. I'm just gonna call him. Let's see what he's got to say.
We're gonna call Mr. O'Sullivan.
Gonna phone a friend.
Alumni.
Okay, let's see what happens with this. That's not how it's supposed to.
That's not how it's supposed to.
Well, that's.
Should we call in Kyle?
Do you think he answers?
Let's hope. Wasn't he supposed to call in through like?
Hey Kevin, you there, brother? Can you hear us?
I'm here and I can hear you.
That's tremendous. Joann is here.
I don't know if he's connected.
Hold on, I gotta connect you to the Bluetooth.
Okay.
Bluetooth.
What's up, Joanna?
Kevin, how are you?
How you doing? What's going on?
I miss you, guy. I'm doing well.
I wish we gotta.
Hold on one sec, Kevin. Can you hear us?
We will hear you.
You're reading us loud and clear. I can hear him. Can you hear him?
Can you hear him?
Loud and clear.
It's just in the left ear.
Volume a little.
Yeah.
Speak, Kevin.
Hello.
Hello.
You have him?
You have
in
him.
both ears?
Yeah, I have left ear.
Left ear. He blew out my right ear, so that one's not working. All right.
I think they muted it because they knew.
Right. Kevin, how you doing?
What is going on?
Uh-oh.
Oops.
Can you still hear us?
What happened?
Oh, we can hear you.
I
We
can
got
hear
you. All right. Well, we are in our studio. Joann and I, we're sitting here. The gang's all here, as it were, gang of two. And we were just kind of talking about hosts that have, passed on the torch. Obviously yourself and Leah and Mark. But we were like, obviously we want to hear how everybody's doing. We were thinking, like, what's Kevin up to these days? Let's give him a ring. We're all here. We're recording the show, and I know you graduated in May. You hosted a number of episodes with us. What's been happening?
Man, first of all, I have to say congratulations to you, Joanna, and Tom. This is incredible. I'm really excited that you guys, like you say, carrying on the torch and bringing Just Law to a whole new level. It's going to be a great season and a great time. We know, obviously, it's in extremely exceptional hands, and it's exciting. It's, when you ask me to come on, it's kind of interesting because I think that this is a very important moment for a lot of reasons. And I think primarily the most important is that for me, when you ask, what's been going on, there's the usual stuff, right? We graduated, which was incredible. That was the first graduation, was the first in-person event that BC Law had hosted in, by that point, almost 2 years.
Right.
So that was pretty cool. That was amazing. And it was Dean Rougeau's last acting moment as Dean. That was also pretty cool. And our friend Kayla Snyder, who was the LSA president, so she got to deliver her address. Professor Ingrid Hillinger was the keynote speaker, and she was exceptional. She just knocked the doors off the place. So there was all that, and that's so impressive and so fun and so cool. Great to actually see people. But then there's another side of it too, which is, and I'm very sorry. So I
is that a landline phone?
Yeah, because literally.
That's the only technology he can use.
What is going on down there? Do I have to come down there?
Oh my God! So I'm in Philly, and
oh my God! Well, that explains it.
Is you can't get a you got to get a package, or else it's liable to never be seen or heard from again. These companies. So
right.
Wow.
One quick second.
No problem.
I'll be right back.
I'll take your time.
Right.
Kevin, are you there?
God.
You got your package, guy?
You get your package?
Got the package.
So, you're down there in Philly. What was that? Like Mickey just came to your door? He's going to tell you got to go fight? I mean, who was that?
Hold on. Well, so unfortunately, it depends on whoever's delivering it. Some people decide, we'll actually wait for you and you can, come in. Unfortunately, the buzzer in this department doesn't work. You can't buzz people in automatically, so you have to go downstairs and let them in.
Holy cow.
And others like, I'm sorry, we're not going to wait for you. And, the package is going to be wherever we find a place to leave it. So best of luck. Best of luck to you on the way.
Oh, my.
And that creates...
Picking up packages in Philly, like if I had to guess what Kevin was doing, that's a very Kevin activity. Like, he wasn't just going to be like reading, like it was going to be something with something interesting to it. But anyway, so you were saying you were talking about what's that? You talked about graduation and what else has been happening?
Yes. So, like I said, so the Professor Hill's speech was incredible. The lessons and so much to take from it. Awesome. Get a chance, listen to it. And then obviously, from there you have a few days of fun and excitement. That was great. And then you kind of move into that bar prep time. And for me, and I tried to make law school a lot like this, but especially the last year, especially your 3L year, especially that last semester, and for me personally, with everything that was going on at that time, as you move into graduation and bar prep, to me, this is all about the life review moment. This is when it's about time to move on to that next stage. What does that mean? It's very much a where have we been, where are we going?
So you're regrouping, kind of, right?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, and I there's a million ways to do it, right? There's no one set way, but for me, something that I was doing without really even knowing it, and then finally being very explicit about it and putting a title or a label or a name on it, was being intentional, trying to be very intentional about breathing in and taking in all those moments and going forward. What does that mean? you know, for a lot of us also, and with breaks in between, this is the last academic step, or at least maybe it's a last academic step for a while. And when you're about to take all of this, right? You're taking all of this. You want to do something with it. Well, what does that look like? And how do you turn that into something? I think for all of us, Dean Rougeau even said it at graduation. What we are so fortunate, we are so blessed to be where we are and to have the opportunities and the tools that we have. But what does that look like in the world? I think sometimes we can think very abstractly and very theoretically about what it means to be a lawyer and what it means to work for justice and fairness and everything. But what does that actually mean? What does that look like? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis? Where are you working? Who are you working for? Who are your clients? What are the kind of cases that you're pursuing? What avenues by which are you pursuing those cases? So it's both a very abstract process, but it has to become also a very concrete process, and it's all in the name of preparation. You're preparing for that next step. You're preparing for what really is a new journey, a continuation, but definitely a markedly different journey. So what does that look like, and what do you need on your way? So you got to dig deep, and in a way that, again, like that all sounds kind of very, very heady and very out there. But for me, that's really what this time has been about. Some would say, Kevin, I'm calling you out right now.
I am
unemployed and you're just sitting around. Fair enough. Yeah, that's true also. Yeah, I am unemployed and I'm working on it. But to me, to be honest with you, and there's a lot more to say about it, obviously, I'm right where I need to be because I needed and still need to go on that process to be ready to say I am answering the call, right? I'm a big believer in, we're all called. And when you answer, you got to answer, first of all. That's the first step. But you also got to be ready.
Yeah.
You better make sure that when that call comes and you answer, you got everything you need. Now, hopefully those things will just line up no matter what. But sometimes, and I guess in my case, if you happen to have the time because you ain't doing anything else, you want to make sure that you're ready for that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know you use the word heavy, but you talk about reflecting and calling and things. I mean, it almost sounds like you went to a certain Catholic high school in Dorchester, Kevin, when you're talking about things like that.
Hey, babe, it is all very Jesuit. I'm not.
It is. It very. Yeah, I'm getting flashbacks, my man.
I mean, even now.
You can you hear the same things here, and obviously, you talked about, graduation and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, how does it, I guess, before we let you go here again, this is, we're talking to Kevin, first time caller, long time listener of the show.
Long time listener, long time active.
Right. Exactly. Taking a step further.
The cornerstone.
Right. One of its architects, as you would say. But, so I guess in a few months that you've, moved on from us here, is there anything looking back at law school, when you were here at BC Law for the 3 years that you were, having been sort of out of the picture, do you look back on anything differently? Is there anything that you've realized, in doing sort of that, going through that thought process that you were describing?
Sure. All right, again, I'm sorry, we're going to have to pause because for some reason, God forbid that literally I've been doing emails all day, and now for some reason it's package hour.
Did you live above an Amazon fulfillment center? I mean, what are we doing? It's
I know.
It's Christmas in Philly. I'm just gonna start ordering things from on Amazon and just start sending them to the apartment. It's I don't know what this is here, guy. It's I don't even know what these things are.
Yeah, send him various Boston paraphernalia.
I don't know. He's down there in Philly. He might change too much.
No,
you can't get the Boston out of that. That's a true blue Weymouth man right there, if there ever was one.
That's so scary. It's gonna be us, and my dad had calculated the time, 1 year and 8 months. We're gonna be in his position.
Wow, that makes it seem like it's not very long.
Right?
Holy crap! He's got to come back and save us. He's gonna give me something else to think about. Oh my goodness gracious!
I'm trying to take solace in his ways.
Another just a quick little side story. So Emery, my girlfriend, got this really amazing, like perfect kitten. I mean, she's absolutely adorable. She's hilarious, amazing personality. She is also an escape artist. So every time you go to get a package, because the only way to do it is to go down there. You can't buzz anybody in. So every time you go down, she either tries to escape. Really, ideally, she'd like to do it on both ends. But either when you go to get the package or when you come back. And when you come back, sometimes it's not a short escape. We're talking about we're going to go up 2 floors, down 1 floor, run around.
So this is like Kramer sliding into the door of Jerry's apartment in Seinfeld. It's like not a. It's a long-winded route.
Yeah, this is a long. We're doing a lot of things, and we're movers and shakers out there.
Oh, big movers and shakers.
Yeah.
Okay.
God bless.
How does the cat feel about you, though?
Yeah. Oh, the
And she's gonna need all 9 lives to get by down there.
I'm going to tell you right now. So the little kid's name is Agnes, or Aggie for short, because Emery's great grandmother had a cat by the same name. So family tradition. And Aggie and I she loves me. We have a great relationship, and she's loving it. She loves looking on the side at the street, at the people, at the cars, and she's the best. She likes to play fetch. She likes to run around. She's awesome. So we have a great thing going on.
That's great. I mean, I hope you're starting to sound like a retiree. I mean, it's like you're really enjoying the simple things in life.
Yep, unemployed. I get packages. I play with a kitten, and then I kind of just, sit and reflect all day.
Okay. I mean, I know we're going to go out when you come. We might have to go to Cracker Barrel now when you come back. I mean, holy cow. Well, that's good. I mean, and so anyway, just go back to what we were talking about before. Is there anything, you sort of described this thought process, there's things you've been realizing. Is there anything, whether it's sort of perspective or just your thoughts on your career path or anything? Is there anything now, having been, out of the sausage factory for a few months that you think about now that you weren't thinking about when you were here?
Well, I think there's a lot to that, right? I think on a kind of a first level, time just brings newfound perspective and appreciation to things. It's certainly, it was a lot of fun. I mean, genuinely, we had a lot of fun. It was awesome. I loved it. I am one of those people who aggravatingly to some and happily for others. I love law school. I thought it was a great experience. I thought there were great moments. I thought we built great relationships, great friendships with not only our class and our section, but also the professors and the BC law community. So I loved every second of that. I think there's also a lot that you just reflect on in terms of legal education, and what does that mean? So, all of a sudden your Rennell writing class, subsequent externships and experiential classes become something new and something different because it's time to use those things. And they weren't just classes. They're real. This is something you're going to be doing in practice. So that's a cool moment. But then, you can get pretty deep with that quickly too, because, what does a legal education mean, right? So how do you transform all of that from a classroom setting or even an element of practice to something that's intended to help people and directed at clients? What are we doing to facilitate and activate all those skills and techniques that we learned for a purpose, for a reason?
Mm-hmm.
Who are we doing it for? In what modes, methods, mediums are we using them, and why are we doing that? That's pretty critical, and that is one way that with time and perspective, all of a sudden you dig deeper into that. There's also a lot to be said about how could we do things differently and better, and how could we improve? I'm a big believer in. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Why I think people ask the question often, why are things the way they are? Why is the world the way it is? And my short answer to that is because people want it to be. Because it's exactly how some people, institutions, corporations, influences, forces, powers, people want things to be. So that being the case, what are we doing about that? And I think the lawyer stands at that intersection, of being able to do something about that. So, when it's also kind of, it's looking backwards to look forward, right? Using the time that you guys have, that both of you have in law school, to prepare yourself, to reflect, and to be intentional about what it looks like on the other side. Because I think it's very easy to just go through the motions, to just put life on autopilot in all different areas, but especially for what we're talking about, school and law school. Okay, I'm going to go to those classes, I'm going to take those classes, I'm going to kind of go through it, and I'm going to get a job, and then I'm going to work that job. And it's not, again, it's not to say that there's anything wrong with that. It's to say that what does that mean? It's just to ask questions of that experience, and then how do we feel about that, right? So I think those are all things, and there's a lot more to it, but for sure that's where we start. Importantly, and over the complete meta value in all of this is you got to be healthy, you got to be happy.
Yeah, it's important things.
We got to be very careful about that. For very obvious reasons and for less obvious reasons. We have to be very careful about, am I happy in this pursuit? Am I healthy doing it? Because we can get consumed, we can get far too caught up. And I do think, we don't need to look far for examples. And some would say, this is a big stretch. And I'm not saying that it isn't a stretch to some degree, but whenever anyone commits themselves to a pursuit, they want to be excellent. So that can be the 1L law student starting out who wants to be excellent student, an excellent lawyer. It can also be people at the literal top of their game, height of the world, Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka. Mental health is across the board.
Yeah, it's an important thing.
There's no weakness. There's no, how could you? Why didn't you just push through? No. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about that sometimes pressure cracks. And sometimes when you're trying to screw a piece of wood too tight, if you screw down too much, it's going to break the wood.
Yeah. Now, Kevin, that's actually the next thing we're actually about to talk about was mental health and OCI and the way that's applying right now. So you're really you're sort of reading our minds. But I do want to thank you for coming on, Kevin. Again, we've been talking to Kevin O'Sullivan, Kevin in Weymouth. We could call if this is like a sports radio show. Kevin in Philadelphia now. He's moving on to bigger and better things.
I want to know if you miss Boston, though.
Oh, I'm the good news, Joanna, is that I am here, but only for a brief time. Boston, it'll always be home, and I got to get back. I am loving the city of Philadelphia. I got to tell you, it's been awesome. The people are incredibly amazing, friendly and open and welcoming, very warm, very inclusive, just a great place. History and people, and food. I got to tell you, the food is amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure you've just been eating salads. No cheesesteaks for you down there, right?
We're doing cheesesteak. We're doing a lot of Italian. You got to stay close to Italian.
You have to do it.
And the best fried chicken place I've ever seen or been to. That was incredible. So,
that's great. All right, well, Kevin, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. And when you get back up here, we'll see what kind of trouble we get into, my man.
I can't wait. Thank you both. Joann,
yeah, thank you.
I wish you all the best.
Yeah, have a good one. Good luck with the cat. Bye-bye. All right, well, that was Kevin O'Sullivan, alumni of the show, alumni of the school,
institution.
But the show, I would say, before the school, right? Just law. But I thought that was really important. What he was saying about, thinking about, because it's tough, because he's exactly right. It's like, we're here, we're okay. I got to do this assignment, I got to do this. We're just thinking about, almost with like tunnel vision, like what it is that we have to do from one day to the next. We don't really think about the big picture, the long game, taking a step back and. Sort of thinking about how it all figures. I mean, I know, for myself, I'm already, sort of thinking about what I have to do for tomorrow, what I have to do for the next day. But, here's a guy, a real, charismatic individual looking back wistfully on his time at the school.
Someone who's been through it all.
He's been, certainly it all.
And also, I think that sage wisdom just comes from time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for the 1Ls listening out there, I think Tom Kevin and I are coming from a very privileged perspective, not being in 1L, which is not even arguably the most difficult year of law school generally. So while we're talking about trying to stay present and making sure you're taking care of yourself, I know it's difficult to focus on those types of things, especially when you're having so many foreign things being thrown at you.
Right.
And sometimes the bigger picture isn't that clear. And honestly, it's an uncomfortable feeling. I know it's a feeling that a lot of us are feeling, even especially considering how some people's job opportunities for next summer might have not panned out in the way that they're expecting. So I just want to say that while Kevin's completely right, that we have to think about what future goals we aspire to, if you make that space for yourself outside of whatever's currently creating you stress, like that's an okay way to go through it too.
No, that's absolutely right, and I think that there's there's a lot of factors that are at play. Obviously, we both just went through the OCI process. I mean, I know, like, I write for the blog for BC Law, and when you log in on the back end, to put your articles in there, it shows like whatever the most popular tags are for all the articles. And I know, like, OCI is like a size 48 font, like the people that are searching for that. It's a very big trend, and obviously it's something that is on the minds of many people who not only are in law school but apply to law school, thinking about how is it that I'm going to fare through the job process, and there's a lot of things about it that as I think now, recently and over the last, few years, we've tried to think more about, the mental health aspect of things. I know when Leah was on, she did an episode on that, and we obviously have, there's classes you can take, and I know there's mindfulness, right? It's a very popular class. I watched that through.
On that class.
Oh, really? Were you able to get in it? Or you just sat in on it? So you audited the class?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got it.
Yeah, I had to sit out in the hall. There were no seats. No, I'm just kidding. But I think it's important, not only in, I think, the sense that's, I think it can almost be somewhat patronizing for people, because it's like we're going to pay attention to our mental health. But at the end of the day, we're still,
I mean, the concept of billable hours.
Right. We're inordinately focused on the quantifiable, and so we're going to say, we're going to, I don't know. I mean, people do different things. People have different outlets for stress and for anxiety and different things. But at the end of the day, it does feel very much like the bread and butter of what it is that we do here, and what it is that we're trying to end up with. There is, and it's very much, I think, distilled, in the OCI process. It's still very much unchanged. Just thinking through things off the top of my head. I mean, I know that interviews are they can obviously be stressful, but just getting the interview, applying to the job, thinking about, what should I check? How many times do I need to check this cover letter? Maybe there's something that I missed in my resume. What do they think about it? How do I, there's so many different variables where at the end of the day, you have limited control over it. And not only do you have limited control over the inputs to this process, but the outputs can not only be frustrating, but confusing. I mean, you get some opportunities and others. You think, what did I do wrong? Is there something I said? Is there something I did? And a lot of times you didn't do anything wrong. It's just, they're the hardliners are sitting in the back room. They're looking at the resume. It's a black box. It's hard to see, exactly how things are working. It can be frustrating. It can be alienating because, people become competitive. People become, all sorts of hot and bothered about how I'm doing, how other people are doing. And I know, the fact that it was remote, I thought was actually really interesting, because we're not all,
I can't imagine what.
I can only imagine. Oh man,
what, like, having to go.
If we're all wearing our Brooks Brothers lined up in the hallway, that's a holy cow. Yeah. But because I think there is something about doing it all. I mean, not only are you not running around to a bunch of different places, but for myself, it's like, you get the schedule, and you're just kind of going from one to the next. You're trying to be as prepared as you can, and I did mock interviews.
We do have the benefit of them having had figured out the process before us with the class above us, when the
remote way to do it. Right. Yeah, because they had all the schools, I think it got kicked off significantly in February, I believe, right?
Right.
It was OCI, so it was different for us. But and the other thing that I would think about too is, so when you'd go through the OCI, you'd have to, you got these emails. I remember it was like a Friday afternoon, you've been invited for whatever firm, and you have to log on to Sage and you make an appointment. I remember seeing, a bunch of the firms, it's like they've got like 30 interviews, like 20 minutes back to back. So the people doing these interviews, you think about trying to cram as much as you can into 20 minutes, but it's like after, if you put yourself in their shoes, they're talking to 30 of us who are all, in many ways, I think at a certain point, just the same person. It's just the same 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, your internship. And it's like, how do you distinguish yourself? There's so many things that go through your mind. And at the end of the day, it can be frustrating because it can be so arbitrary. It can seem unfair. In many ways, it is. But at the end of the day, I think what you pointed out before, that we're all going to land on our feet. It's not about, like you hear some people get into the ranking of the firm. I mean, all these things. It's like at the end of the day, it's like sort of going back to what Kevin said. You can't lose sight of what it is that you're here for. And you have to understand what that is.
Right.
Because, look, law school, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone to say, it's a very competitive place. It can be even to your detriment. You get into this competition of who's doing what, who's been. I mean, I think there's, there's like one resource in I think it's like the CSO Google Drives, like who worked where. It's like there's so much of this keeping up with the Joneses that I think going to what Kevin said, it can, I think for a lot of people, be not only to your detriment but unnecessary. There's so much of this
unneeded stress,
this pageantry of law school, right? That it just becomes and I think BC Law in a lot of ways does a really good job trying to have resources and not be one of these places that's sort of the stuff of movies like Legally Blonde, and try to not have that environment. But at the same day, there's an element of self-selection. We're all competitive people and
intelligent people. It's
intelligent
kind of
people, yeah.
When you're in a room of people who were versus like undergrad,
Mhm.
where like there isn't a curve for the most part
Right.
in undergrad classes, but all the people that are here at either the same level, higher or lower in some regard, on the same intellectual basis as you. And
Mhm.
so that's definitely where you mentioned imposter syndrome. That comes hugely into play.
Mhm.
And I think tying in with what Mr. O'Sullivan said,
Mr.
Kevin,
O'Sullivan.
that focusing on what brought you here, as using that as a grounding tactic to get you through those harder moments, are definitely is integral
Mhm.
to that.
I definitely agree.
So, I mean, to wrap up our discussion, concerning OCI, I think us as 2Ls, we have a lot of sage advice that we can advise or
Yeah.
give off to the 1Ls and below, people who are aiming to apply at BC Law.
Mhm.
So, after your 1L experience, Tom, if there's anything that you can say to either potential 1Ls right now, or even to yourself back in 1L year, what would you say?
About OCI or just in general?
No, it's in general. Outside of OCI.
Yeah, well, I have one more thought on OCI, and then I'll answer. I think one other thing before we wrap up that discussion is just, and this was something that you realize going through it, is that there were so many, because like for a lot of people, it's like when you apply to law school, it's your LSAT and your GPA for the most part. Really, I mean, to be honest, it's really the only two things that they're really paying much of attention to. But I think with OCI, there's all this emphasis on GPA, right, in your grades, and I think there's a lot of people who have all sorts of experiences. If you've worked between college and law school, you've done things that are really interesting or really applicable, or you have profound charisma or communicate, all these abilities that are necessary as a lawyer, that can even make you stand out. It's very difficult, I think, for a lot of people to make their strengths shine through when I think for a lot of people, your grades can keep you out, and at that point, if you've only got 20 minutes in a screener, it's very hard to completely demonstrate everything that you bring to the table in that 20 minutes. And so I think there was a frustration to be said for people who bring a lot to the table, but really never get their day in court, no pun intended, or maybe somewhat intended, to really be able to show everything that they can do. I think the OCI process you can feel arbitrary. You can feel like, almost, I mean, I don't say dehumanizing, but there is something about it where you feel like you're not able to fully be yourself and fully, showcase everything that you can bring to the table. So I think it's important, in your own way, whether it's in a cover letter or, whether it's in your interview, or I really think through networking is where you can create those opportunities to really sell yourself and to really, show decision makers, really most importantly, what you're able to do. It's important to be true to yourself and not get caught up in what is quite honestly something that is arbitrary, something that is unfair, something that is, based on, I think in many ways, a narrow band of criteria. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at the end of the day, like Kevin said, and like we've been saying, you have to be true to yourself and why you're here and what it is that you want to do, and have faith and be confident that you'll land on your feet. You'll be fine.
Exactly.
Now, with regard to question about what I would say looking back at one, I would say probably for me, and I know it was a little bit different for us because we had like we had like a fully COVID 1L. It was like kind of a one-off experience there. But
on that note, actually,
yeah.
when last year when 3Ls and alumni were like, man, I'm so sorry that this is your first experience. At the time, I was like, man, I get to roll out of bed 5 minutes before class. So, things could be worse. But in actuality, I do see what we missed out on.
Yeah, I do see that now. I mean, I know that, Zoom, I think, had
The
certain
camaraderie.
conveniences. Yeah, I mean, I know that like being able to, like, for instance, like have speakers that weren't here and be able to do things that
Yeah.
not have to factor in commute times. I mean, there was a certain convenience to that, but at the same time,
Or
you did
lunch.
right. You did lack that, I guess, that human element. We're all kind of it makes things very two dimensional.
Very.
But I still thought it was, I think, a really great experience. I mean, for those who are, I mean, it's still 1L, it's still school, it's still going to be challenging.
Right.
But I think looking back at it, if I had any, whether it's for our 1L or really for anybody's 1L, I think the most important thing would be, you want to be involved. You want to network, you want to make connections. You want to be involved in student organizations. You don't just want to do school and go home.
Yeah.
By any stretch of the imagination. But I think there's also something to be said about, I think, just like keeping your head down and like trying to, and it's hard because you've never been in law school before, so you're not fully sure what it is that you're getting yourself into. But to the extent that you can, sort of attenuate some of the challenges of, things like, just like the not only the workload, but making the social component, just making sure that at the end of the day, you recognize that you're really here for school, you're here for your job. Of course, you want to branch out and you want to do other things, while you're in law school. But I think that's important to keep your focus on what it is that brought you here, and realizing that there is no, you don't want to be like the most. I mean, there's people who like make a. I mean, we all follow people on Instagram. There's a show, I think, that can be made of how many hours people are saying. There's an element of toxic competition, I think, but somewhere between, trying to do too much and somewhere between, perhaps not doing enough, there is a happy medium that you can find of, being involved, making connections, doing your work, being true to, who it is that you are, still doing what it is that you enjoy. I think there's this myth that's out there that like also it's like this all consuming thing where you don't, you're just locked in the library. It's really not true at all. So I think you have to find that balance. And I think that coming to law school, not having done that before, it's hard to kind of know what that looks like. But I think there's no, and this perhaps sounds cliche, but there's no shame in just being yourself and just doing what it is that studying your way, doing what it is that you like to do for fun. Like you don't have to be this like prototypical Joe law student that just sits and like what works for you and what it is that's meaningful to you. And I'm starting to sound like Kevin a little bit, but like not that there's anything wrong with Kevin. It's just like we're two guys from Boston who drop our eyes. It starts to sound like the same thing. But I think there's something to be said about finding who you are and like what it is that works for you, and not feeling like there's peer pressure, there's all the others, not feeling like you have to emulate things you see, and to just do you is basically what I'm saying. I think that's probably the advice that I would give. Now, as we wrap up here, we've obviously we're a few weeks into the second L of our 3L journey. How's things been going?
Well, I want to speak a little bit to your point.
Sure, go ahead. I just made many of them probably. Or probably didn't make any points, but it said a lot, so go ahead.
Right. Well, I mean, I think my biggest advice I would give is just being open-minded. I think that there are a lot of different opinions that people have on what you should do the summer before law school. Some people read like those instructional books.
Right.
And whatever.
There's courses, there's like online things.
Right.
Yeah.
And if that gives you some comfort into what you're going to get into, by all means do it. But I don't think there's any pressure to do sort of preparatory things like that. And even when you're in 1L, just keeping an open mind. Well, Tom's right. At the end of the day, you should take all advice concerning, how to study for what class, how to make your outlines, how to, keep yourself engaged in class actively. Whatever worked for you to get to this point is likely going to work. But at the same time, law school is a very unique experience from undergrad. So I think that being open to change is definitely something that I would say is hugely impacted my performance, especially between fall and spring semester. Figuring out what worked for you, figuring out what didn't work for you, even in terms outside of school of studying methods, where it's like I definitely have to hang out with friends at some point during the week, to make sure that I know I'm not doing something related to law school and that my life isn't all consumed by it. So definitely keeping an open mind, and in law school and in the legal profession, giving advice is our job. And sometimes it comes kind of what's the word? Unprompted?
Unsolicited.
Right. Unsolicited. And everyone's going to have a take to say about what worked for them and what didn't work for them, what to avoid, what to do. Just take all of that with a grain of salt and just do your best. Like Tom said, keep your head down, focus on what brought you here.
Mm-hmm.
And even if, a lot of, I think from what I've noticed in meeting the 1Ls, I feel like the demographic of law school is just getting younger and younger. In that,
Yeah.
where like there are definitely some people who have spent some time out of work. There are
I have a
definitely some
mentee that's like
people
20
20,
or 21 or
right?
something. Yeah.
I think I had a friend who came in, she was 21. I mean, by reference, I'm not saying that Tom and I are
Yeah.
like outside this. We're both sitting here as
Right.
23-year-olds.
I'm
Or
25.
25.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Long in the tooth, this guy.
But either way, the point I was trying to make with that is that a lot of people at that age really don't know who they are. I don't have a central idea of who I am. I have, a concept of what I like, what I might enjoy, but this is definitely a time that we use to figure that out. In law school, well, that may be to your detriment sometimes, where you can't do what you want because you have the constraints of school. Simultaneously, use this time. It doesn't all have to be about school. Is my long-winded way of
Right.
saying that, like, this is what my big advice I'd give
Yeah.
to the 1Ls.
I think it's that you have to find, again, school's important, but there's other things in your life that are important. So you have to find that happy medium, which is going to be different for you than other people that you'll see here.
Definitely.
And, you go into 1L, you're sort of platooned together with 84 other people, and you have to see them every day for 9 months. And then there's a lot of that, no one's done law school before. And you see what other people are doing. There is that peer pressure. There was a social piece, which we're actually going to be discussing in a upcoming episode, but so I'll hold off that discussion a little bit for today. But you can't lose sight of who you are, how what it is that you do, how you find meaning, how you work, like what your style, and just do that. Like I think there is that element of law school, that keeping up with the Joneses, that you just can't fall into that, and it's challenging because it's like we're all here, we're all law students. I mean, it's been actually interesting. You can kind of tell who the 1Ls are, like just pulling into the parking lot, which I've had to circle like 30 times every day to find. It's like that Natick Mall on Black Friday. Holy crap. But, you can tell who the 1Ls are because there's like that chipper sort of like we're all figuring this out. But then I think people sort of amalgamate into this, like, but by the time you get through 1L, it's like everyone kind of, there's like this just I'm a law student. Everyone kind of turns into a very similar thing. But you have to just do you, be yourself. And I know that sounds so cliched. It sounds like I'm reading like, all the places you'll go. But no, you really have to just what it is that you do, what works for you, what you want to be, just do, you'll be fine. Like it's not the end of the world. It's not the scariest thing. It's not the hardest thing. You come in, you do your reading, you show up, make friends, go to clubs. And I know this sounds perhaps overly simplistic, but there is something you said about not getting carried away, not getting like swept away and like the he said, she said, all, you just be yourself and you'll be fine. And now, because that was us a year ago, and now we're here. We're in 2L and a couple of weeks in. And, before we go, like, we'll just, I guess, just talk about that. I know it's only been a couple of weeks back at the grind. 4 now? Right? Because it starts before, it always throws off the math because I'm, used to, because it's September. When I think September, I think school starts, but it starts just before then. And even more so because you have to get your books, you do everything, you get back in the frame of mind. But how's it been going?
I was not in the frame of mind until it started, to be honest. And I did that because, I enjoyed summer. Being back in school, the major difference, and I think is a thing for me to offer to the 1Ls to look forward to about 2L, is just the control that you have on your schedule.
Yeah.
And I'm taking classes that are like intellectually stimulating. So the classes I'm in, I'm taking a lot of theoretical based classes because I really like the discussion of philosophy and interpretive law. And so that's really cool. What's also really cool is just setting your own schedule. I know that sounds so elementary, but like operating on your own, at least within the certain extent of class offerings, operating on your own schedule is great. I don't know. I came into 2L like, man, I'm a 2L now.
I'm a 2L now.
Right? And I think that's just how it's going to be. We'll see how 3L year is, but
you're already on 3L. Oh my god, I'm still on today. But I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know for myself, so you're right. Like being able to, I forget what it's called, like the paradox of choices. There's a certain phrase that relates to like, once you have choices, things can almost become more challenging. Like I know for myself,
right, yeah.
When we got into the drop ad, when school started, I start making some adjustments. I went through. the first few days there. And once I had all my classes, I thought, okay, I really like these classes,
Right.
but there's another one I like. I'm not sure I feel with this one, but then this one's at the same time. I'm actually doing a job doing the, like we were talking about before we came on, the Len Fellowship at Boston Children's Hospital, which is on Fridays this semester. And so that's for, you get paid for that. So it's not for credit, but it also takes time. So there's this balancing act that you have to do. And it's, like 1L, you don't get to pick your schedule. You're just doing what they say,
Right.
which in a way, if you don't exactly like the schedule or these aren't your favorite professors, it's like, okay, that's not the greatest thing. But at the end of the day, like there was something simple about just like, okay, here's what it is and you come do it. But once you have to start plugging and playing and choosing your own adventure, it can become complicated. Like I had a hard time.
Stressful at first.
I had a hard time during drop, like figuring out, okay, well, if I want to drop, but I like that, but this is at the same, managing trade-offs. And I ultimately ended up with a schedule that was, just dandy. I like everything that I'm in. I think we're talking about, I'm in, antitrust, trademark, entertainment classes that I really like, which is good. So it does take a little bit to kind of figure that out. I know you also have to think about, down the road, like, okay, well, if I have this many credits this semester and I want to do a semester in practice and that's this many credit, there is some of that you have to be able to do. And you've got plenty of people here, and the student stars, people that are able to help you figure that out, which is really great. You're not alone, by any stretch of the imagination. You can talk to your friends about what they're saying. I think I asked you about it was like IP survey. I think I asked you about that, and people talk about classes and you share syllabi and such things, and you figure it out, and eventually you're fine. And I think that's the other thing. Like the overall message here is, you're all going to be fine. We're all going to make out like doctors. Like we're going to be fine. It's going to be we're like lawyers, which I don't know which one you'd rather be, but we're all here,
Tom.
right? But there is that, like you come in and there's like that anxiety to everything, but like you'll figure it out. You'll be fine. And I know now we're a couple of weeks in. We're cooking with gas. Everything's just going great, and I'm glad to be back here doing these episodes. I'm glad to be doing more of them as time goes on, and we're in a good place. I mean,
Actually,
go ahead.
While we are on the topic of our
Cooking with gas.
Cooking with Gas, we had 3 of our great other contributors that we mentioned before: Kevin, O'Sullivan, Leah, and Mark have all left us, meaning that we have some positions open. So if you are interested in joining the team, please reach out to justlawpod@gmail.com.
That's the email?
That's it. I have it written down.
You can just email us. Like you can just do.
You can
just find us.
But I think that's the. Hang on, let me check it.
Okay. Well, while she's checking that, I mean, we are. If there's any among us, and as I understand, there are some who have experience with like radio, TV, audio, editing. Editing's a big. We need. That could use a shot in the arm. The editing, we could use somebody, if anybody has like experience using like Final Cut or Adobe or anything like that, we could always use that. Or anybody who like to host, or at least to someday become a host, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely 1Ls too.
1Ls, yes. The 3Ls, that's not really. They don't help them.
Oh
yeah, they can show up.
One last hurrah before they
schlep in here. Yeah.
Schlep.
Yeah.
It is so.
I've seen some of the 3Ls around the line. They are the tails dragging out the tracks with some of them.
I won't speak to that. I mean, in my opinion, I think that some of the 3Ls are just chilling.
Yeah. Hey, that'd be nice.
I mean, I wish that was me. Anyway, so if you have any interest in joining the podcast, join the team. We have a lot of exciting things that we have planned up for the next semester and for sure the next year. Please email justlawpod@bc.edu, or feel free to reach out to either Tom Blakely and I, Joanna Plaisir. So we'd like to thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We hope to see you on future ones.
Yeah, it's been the Just Law Podcast. I'm Tom Blakely.
Joanna Plaisir.
And that's a wrap, and we'll catch you next time.